Please welcome to the stage a panel on how to engage with millennial Latinx voters, moderated by Ana Bertan, a producer with Full Frontal with Samantha Bee.
Working? Yeah, okay, cool. Hi, everybody. How's everybody doing? I know it's one of the last things you're going to see today, so thank you so much for bringing in energy today. This is a panel about how to engage the Latinx voter. It's very important in your organizations to get the Latinx community involved. And it's kind of funny that we're representing the Latinx. Oh, hello.
Apologies.
We're running on Latino time. It's totally fine. And as the Latinx panel, we just took a selfie backstage. So yeah, so I wanted to, first of all, introduce ourselves. My name is Ana Bertan. I'm a digital producer on Full Frontal with Samantha Bee. I often produce and direct segments on the show about immigration and the Latino community. I'm really passionate about that. And I will hand it off to you guys.
My name, is this thing working? Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. My name is Berto Aguayo. I am a community organizer in the south side of Chicago. Recently, I ran a campaign, a grassroots campaign for aldermen in the 15th ward on the city south side. I also helped co-found an initiative called Increase the Peace that engaged young people in the fight for peace in communities of color. More recently, I was the Latino Outreach Director for the Lori Lightfoot campaign for mayor.
Woo! Yeah, I think we need to give it up for Lori Lightfoot, everybody.
Yes.
Selena Villanueva, I'm state representative of the 21st District. The 21st District is the southwest side of the city of Chicago, part of the southwest side of the city of Chicago, and it includes neighborhoods of Brighton Park, Little Village, Garfield Ridge, and then it goes out into the near southwest suburbs, which includes Stickney Summit, Lyons, parts of Riverside, and a couple other smaller suburbs. Prior to my appointment, because I was actually appointed in late July of last year, I was an immigrant rights organizer, and my main job was actually politics and civic engagement. So this topic that we're talking about was literally the past 4 years of my life, particularly around 2016, to increase Latino voter, Latinx voter turnout and voter registration. So it's something that's near and dear to me, and I'm excited to have this conversation.
Awesome, we're so glad you're here.
Hi, everyone. My name is Miguel Angel Blancarte Jr., and actually, that's not whoever that is. I have no clue who that is. A little bit different.
That's a white person.
No clue. But as it mentions there, I am a consultant strategist and a writer. I'm a first-generation American, born in the southwest side of Chicago in the La Villita neighborhood. And the Latino issues is one of my focuses for the past couple of years, just because I've realized how it impacts not only my community, my city, my state, but also the country. And moving forward, also focusing on improving bilateral relations with not only Mexico, but also Latin American countries.
Great.
Awesome. What an amazing panel. Hello, my name is Ambar Calvillo Rivera. I'm the VP of Campaigns at Voto Latino. And previously, I was the Director of Community Engagement for the Democratic National Committee. And my wife and I ended up moving back home to El Paso, Texas. And our president and CEO for Voto Latino, when she called me about the job and heading into the midterms, I told her, well, listen, I'm not leaving my border community. I'm staying in El Paso, Texas. And the good thing is, she believed in Texas a long time ago, back when people said it was crazy to try and register Latinx voters in Texas and try to do any type of organizing in Texas. So I'm based there. And we have chapters across the country, and look forward to talking about some of the things that we did, but my strong opinions about turnout and voter engagement for Latinx millennials.
And is that your correct picture up there?
It is.
Okay, great. Great. I just wanted to read something as to why this panel is important that I read on the news. NBC News says, for the first time, Hispanics are on track to be the largest racial or ethnic minority group to be eligible to vote in a presidential election. So that's kind of a big deal. I think it's important that your organizations that are here know how to reach out to the young Latinx voter. So I'm so glad we have these experts in the field to tell us how to best reach out to that population. One of the things I remember from a Voto Latino summit that I was at in March, something that really stuck out to me was somebody said, if every single Latino eligible voter voted in Texas, the state would turn blue. And that's something that I continue to think about as to why it's so important to reach out to those voters. What do you guys think going into 2020 are the priorities of a young Latinx voter? You can go in order, or if you know the answer.
I'm going to chime in first, just because you gave a shout out to Power Summit, which is one of our signature events. But I, to that point, if every Latinx person that's eligible to vote in Texas voted, now imagine if every eligible Latinx voter voted across the country. There was 29 million Latinx eligible to vote for the 2018 midterm elections. And in the states that have the highest Latinx density populations, there was a lot of congressional races and actually down ballot races that were flipped, a lot of seats that were flipped. And then going into 2020, there's 32 million Latinx eligible voters. But what we saw in midterms, Voto Latino ran a survey and with Change Research after the midterms, before and after, but after we found that 45% of Latinx voters, 45% of Latinx voters were not contacted once by a single campaign. They received their information by organizations probably like a lot of you all, like us, like organizers that are doing different issue organizing. And that's great, but it's also a problem. And so I think when people are trying to figure out how how to do outreach to Latinx voters, I will say start by just doing it. Go out there and have a conversation. I'm sure we're going to dig in more, but I would say start by doing it.
And I think some of the issues that will reel in the millennial Latino population are mainly twofold. Immigration, which has been at the forefront ever since really early 2000s, 2001, even before the movement in 2005 and 2006 with the mass rallies that were happening in different cities. And it was really, impactful at the age of 17 attending one of those rallies, the one here in Chicago in the summer of 2005. It really just opened up my eyes to see that not only is this really an issue, right? Because we saw it at home and saw it within my community, but when everyone kind of came out, and not only in Chicago, but in all parts of the US, that made me realize that it really is an issue for me and for my community, for the US. That happened during the summer before I made it off to undergrad. I was off in the state of Rhode Island for school, and it just allowed me to take some of that mentality to the East Coast, to a private institution where I was not, where I didn't see a lot of familiar faces, but tried making this an issue not only with other Latino students on campus, but also with the university itself, with other students, non-Latino students. So immigration, I think, is still an issue moving forward. I think another one of the issues is healthcare, right? Because I'm now 31 years old. I'm one of those millennials, and healthcare is an issue that's important to us because it's affecting us. It's affecting the quality of life. Kind of tied to that is housing and affordability. There have been numerous studies that millennials are some of the ones that are not purchasing homes right now. And well, you know what? It's not that we don't want to purchase homes. It's really the fact that we can't necessarily access affordable housing right now, right? We can't invest in housing. Why? Because in 2008, 2009, because of the market crash and everything that happened afterward that has been happening, that's been affecting us. And so these are some of the issues that we really need to strike up within the Latino millennials.
So I'm going to try to be concise because I know that we only have a certain amount of time. So I'm going to say a couple of things because I think that this is really important. Latinos and Latinx millennials are not a monolith. We don't all agree with the same thing. We all don't think the same way, and we all don't look the same way. So what's happening in New York and the experiences of Latinx millennials in New York, it's different and slightly different than here in Chicago, as opposed to Texas, as opposed to all places throughout the country. So instead of like trying to understand and say it's just one thing, it's a nuanced perspective and a nuanced conversation, and that's been the consistent thing. And I'm bringing this up because I think this is really important to note, because it is about issues, and it isn't just about immigration, and it isn't just about healthcare, and it isn't just about housing. It's about education, it's about jobs, it's about all of these things that everybody cares about, because I'm pretty sure that all of you care about that as well. But I think it's really important to know that, you know, and I'm glad that you brought this up in terms of campaigns and outreaching out to us. So a lot of my work was with immigrant communities, both millennial and just like new Americans, so people that were becoming naturalized citizens who were eligible to vote. And most campaigns don't spend a dime on not just millennials, but anybody that's a new citizen. And here's the thing about immigrant communities, including Latino populations. We have the ability to expand our electorate not just by people turning 18 years old, but by people being able to naturalize. And understanding that correlation between the work and being able to do that is one thing. Additionally, it's about messaging and the way that campaigns are actually talking to our communities. In the city of Chicago, 13 out of 14 Latino density wards, high density wards, went for Bernie Sanders during the presidential primary. They didn't go for Hillary Clinton. They went for Bernie Sanders. There's something there. So whoever has a boatload of money and wants to like dive into that data and why that happened, let's talk, because I want to, like, I don't have a boatload of money, but I want to dive into that data and see what that means, because there is something that's happening. And again, that's not necessarily what happened throughout the rest of the country with Latino millennials. But there's a lot more that goes on into this conversation that, you know, 25 minutes isn't going to give us. But, you know, I think it's stuff like that that we need to delve in terms of messaging, in terms of outreach, in terms of actual connection with Latino millennials.
Yeah. Go ahead.
One of the things that I forgot to mention in my bio was that I was an intern at Illinois Coalition of Immigrant and Refugee Rights, going out there and registering people as they were being naturalized. And it was crazy to see that we were the only ones there. You know, 200 people are coming out. They're really proud of, you know, they just became citizens, and we were the only ones that were actually there registering people to vote. And I think to Selena's point about the issues that we care about, when I ran for alderman in the 15th Ward is situated in the south side of Chicago. It sits neighborhoods like Back of the Yards. If you have heard about Back of the Yards, right, think Saul Alinsky, right, the modern day birthplace of community organizing. But now it's a predominantly Latino community, about 70% Latino, 30% African American. And there, the issue for the Latinos that I was engaging with, our issue is not immigration or healthcare. Our issue was violence prevention, right? So I think about when we're engaging Latinx voters all over the country, it has to be a very micro-targeted approach to the population that you're dealing with, because it will be very different city to city, sometimes even neighborhood to neighborhood. I know that in La Villita, the issue of immigration is way more of an issue than it might be in a place like Back of the Yards. And I think sometimes campaigns and their messaging, they want to have a one-size-fits-all approach that just doesn't work in communities. The other thing that I would say is that if we look at the Latino population as a whole, more than 50% of Latinx voters are under the age of 27, right? In the campaign that I ran for alderman, we had a very small budget of like maybe $10,000, right? And our opposition had about $150,000, and we only came about 277 votes short of a runoff. And the reason why we did that is because we started young, right? I'm not talking about 18, I'm talking about high school, right? Because being a civically engaged citizen is not going to happen overnight. Right? The process of getting to the ballot box shouldn't start with getting to the ballot box. It should start with engaging young people in the things that they care about, whether it's organizing around issues of immigration, healthcare, violence prevention. And that's where our Increase the Peace initiative kind of helped in that process, because the young people that we were engaging, they were standing out from 5 p.m. to 5 in the morning in the most dangerous blocks in the city of Chicago fighting for peace, right? So when you're asking them, hey, let's go vote or let's knock on doors, they were like, all right, let's get it, right? It was easy. right? But I think sometimes people just want to engage people when they're turning 18 and try to get them in, but I think the process should start way younger than that.